We have seen close to 15,000 students documented give their lives to Jesus. Don't tell me never, because that just empowers me more. I was in bed for about 8 weeks, couldn't leave my house, couldn't get out of bed, didn't eat anything for 8 weeks, came as close to death as you can possibly come.
Oh, wow. Well, Tonya, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited about this conversation in particular because, the podcast is called How Change Happens. So there's a lot of people listening that are thinking about their community, thinking about the nation, and their heart's burning. Like Jesus so changed my life. How do I impact other people's lives? And so I think you're an interesting story because, ostensibly, you're just a mom, but all of a sudden you're at the center of this really crazy college student, awakening, or I don't know what to classify it as. And so I think talking with you is going to inspire a lot of people and give them a lot of like behind the scenes insight. Could you just start with maybe what is happening on college campuses? What is this Unite movement? For all the people that might not have heard of it yet.
Absolutely. First, John Mark, thank you for having me on. I tell people all the time, I love to tell the story of what God is doing. And every opportunity I can share what he's doing, I'm going to take that opportunity. So thank you for allowing me to do that on your podcast. I'll tell you, people also ask me all the time to pray for revival. And what I would say is revival is here and it's happening and we're seeing it. And it's not just on college campuses, it's in prisons. It's happening all over our nation and then even around the world. And there's such a hunger. I feel like God is preparing his bride. That's what I feel like. And we're just seeing it move across college campuses and what we do with Unite. But we hear reports every day of how God is moving, even through the Send and other ministries that are doing what we're doing in different ways.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I told you, I was talking to Will, and what they're seeing with Run with Christ, it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, everybody's looking at it like, what is God doing right now? It's so exciting. But tell me, what with Unite, like how many college campuses? What's happening when you guys show up? What are the messages that are kind of gripping young people?
It's funny how, if I can kind of take you back to how it started and how Unite even came about. I worked in the education system for 21 years, and I remember back in 2019 walking into my office, opening an email, and the heading on the email said, "Something big is coming." I never even opened the email, but it was like something from that subject line jumped into my heart. I quit my job. As I
From
didn't
an
know,
email subject line?
from an email subject line that
That
said
is
something
awesome, Tonya.
big is coming. And I'll tell you, John Mark, before we hopped on this podcast, you made a statement and you said something big is coming. And that's how God speaks to me. He repeats himself. And so I take that, even from what you said, God's still telling me that. But yes, I quit my job and started leading prayer walks on Auburn's campus. Crazy enough. My husband is a basketball coach at Auburn University, and so he's coaching, and so I'm around the college campus all the time and started mentoring college students. And I just remember hearing one story after another. And what I can tell you is I can look at a college student's social media and everything looks amazing, but I can spend
Mm,
about 10 minutes with them and find out everything's not amazing. And
wow.
a lot of times behind their pictures is pain that nobody's seeing. And so I'm hearing one story after another from college girls, and stories like, hey, I go home, I go into my closet, I close the door, and I sit there and pull my hair out, and I beg God to not let me
Wow.
live another day. And so I think I heard about 6 stories from 6 different girls. And the last one just gripped my heart so strongly. I remember getting up from the table, pushing my chair in, and literally screaming, "No more." Like, I
Whoa.
refuse to sit back and watch college students suffer like this. And it's secret pain, like, people don't even know it's going on. And so I started leading prayer on Auburn's campus. I started with 5 of my small group girls in our football stadium. We just joined together and prayed a simple prayer. God, we ask you to give hope to a hopeless generation. And from that prayer, We started praying every Friday on Auburn's campus. We started with 5 girls. It ended up in a few weeks being 200 students, all praying the same thing. Restore
In
hope
5 weeks?
in 5 weeks.
Oh
Restore
my
hope to a
gosh.
hopeless generation, and just break the chains of anxiety and depression over the students. And during those prayer times, I had a vision. I saw thousands of students gathered in our basketball arena. Had no idea what I was seeing. Something came over me. I will tell you, I started meeting with every local pastor, campus ministry leader. I started meeting with administration and coaches, anybody that would sit in front of me. Matter of fact, is our football coach's first day on the job. He had just gotten hired, and he comes to his office on the first day, and I'm sitting in his office telling him about this vision. He said, "You have my full support," and he said, "You can have the
That's
football
awesome.
stadium to pray anytime you want." And so I didn't know really what I was doing, but I'll tell you, I knew God was stirring me and giving me authority and boldness to step into something that seemed way bigger than me. And I'll tell you this too, as soon as and I'll try to keep this short, but as soon as I got the vision for Unite in our basketball arena, it's like the enemy started telling me the assignment's too big for you and you're not
Oh,
qualified
wow.
for what's coming. And through different people, over about 2 weeks, I was getting Exodus 33, 14, and 15, where Moses said to God, "If your presence doesn't go before me, do not send me."
Yeah.
And God said, "My presence has gone before you." Everywhere I went, the pastor was saying that, leaders were saying that, and I was like, "Okay, God, I know when you repeat yourself, you're trying to tell me something." So started planning this event on Auburn's campus, not and John Mark, I I had Jonathan Pokluda coming, I had Jenny Allen coming, and I had Passion Music coming. But I didn't know if I had any students coming
Okay.
because we didn't sell tickets, we didn't
That's
have
a crazy
registration.
feeling, isn't it?
It can cause a little bit of a panic attack, I'll tell you. So the night before, I remember meeting with some moms and dads. We met at the arena, we were praying for the event, and as I was praying, something came out of my mouth. I didn't even know what I was saying. And what I said was, "Unite Auburn, unite other college campuses, unite the nation." Had no idea what I was even talking about. We go into the next night. I told JP and Jenny, "I don't know if anybody's coming." Like, we didn't sell tickets, we didn't have registration. We get in and over 5,000 students have gathered in our
Oh
basketball.
my gosh. No way.
Remember Jenny Allen walking up to me, grabbing me by the hands and saying, "Tonya, what in the world?" I said, "Jenny, I have no idea. I'm just in awe of God."
Yeah, I mean, that's, like, how unusual is that for college students to gather around the gospel like that?
Yes. And the movement had not really even started, so nobody even knew
It wasn't
what
like
they
the
were
cool
coming
thing
to.
yet.
They didn't know
Yeah.
what they were coming to. I told
Unbelievable.
JP, probably about 2 weeks before the event, I was like, "JP, I know that you're supposed to speak on purity." While he was preaching that message, nobody in that arena moved. I don't even know if anybody was breathing. It was the most intense thing. Matter of fact, I was hitting my husband saying, "Everybody's gonna leave. Like, this is so intense." And nobody
Why
left.
did you have conviction that that was the message?
The crazy thing, when God gave me the vision for Unite, I flew out to Waco, Texas, and I heard an interview with my son-in-law, Grant Trout, and Jonathan Pokluda. And Grant said to JP, he said, "I remember in 2015, you preached a message at the porch in Dallas, and it changed my life. It was on sexual sin and pornography. My heart started racing. And God said, 'This is the
Oh,
message you'll take to college campuses.'" My
no
daughter
way.
had just come off of a reality TV show, The Bachelor, and she made it to the very end. She took a stand for her faith and purity. And what God was telling me was none of that was accidental. It was all leading up to us taking this message to college campuses across the nation. And so we thought the night would end. JP's preaching this message, and we're just all like, nobody's moving. It was so powerful. And we thought the night was going to end with Passion leading worship. And a student texted one of our local pastors and said, "I have to get baptized tonight. I have to do it tonight." We didn't
Whoa.
have plans for baptisms. So
Okay.
I said, "Jenny, God's not done. You've got to go back on stage." So Jenny goes back on stage and she says, "Hey, we want to invite you all over to the Red Barn where there's a lake. It's about a half a mile from campus. The arena empties. Everybody is running half a mile to this lake." And we get there, and I will tell you, there were probably about 4,000 students gathered around this lake that had all come over.
No
Some
way.
people seeing it on social media that didn't even go to the event, just showing up. And trucks around the lake, it was dark. They had their headlights on, pointing down to the water. We had 6 pastors in the water baptizing, and we couldn't keep up. There were so many students getting in.
That
And
is
let me tell you what they were
crazy.
saying.
Yeah.
They were telling the pastors, "For 10 years, I've been addicted to sexual sin and pornography, but tonight, I wanna come out of this water free." And it was the most powerful thing, and I told JP after, I said, "JP, it's not an accident that God led us to that message for this generation." And what I can tell you to sum all of it up is Unite Auburn, unite other college campuses, unite the nation, started at Auburn. We started getting 2 days after the event, God woke me up in the middle of the night. He said, "Form a team, do it quickly. This is gonna spread fast." Had no idea
Wow.
what I was doing.
You woke up middle of the night
Like 3 AM,
and that thought was just so strong.
that thought was so strong. I called JP and Jenny. I said, "This is what God's saying. I have no idea what it means." I formed a board, a 501(c)(3), and I hired 3 people with no money. And as soon as I did, I started getting contacted from students all over the nation saying, "We are desperate. Like, our friends are committing suicide. Would you bring Unite to our campus?" And I knew then, like, what God spoke to me was starting to unfold. So I'll stop there and let you ask more questions, but
Oh my gosh.
that's how it launched.
I got goosebumps. I mean, this is absolutely insane. Okay, so just to tie it into, the theme of the show, how change happens. One thing that I think is so remarkable, and this is really interesting. I had a girl, a Noelle from uh, like the Tacoma area, and very similar story. God spoke to her a vision about, God spoke to her about starting a Jesus club at her high school,
Wow.
and so she got her friends together and they prayed all like I think it was all summer long and started the Jesus Club, and it was like it wasn't explosive at first, but then she got some sort of a vision of God pouring out his spirit on the campus. And so that like motivated her, and she's like, "No, guys, we have to press into prayer." And so they had this text group, and I think all through the summer they did, like 30 minutes every day. And then boom, the next year came and it exploded. They're like they went from I think the smallest classroom on campus to, the biggest classroom or the auditorium. One started
Uh,
at the junior high. And so it's so interesting, that some of these things you just can't deny it's God.
yeah.
At the end of the day, it's like he spoke to you, he gave you the vision, he did go before you. Exodus 33. Yeah, it was interesting how you had those that small beginning of prayer and you just kept pressing in and following that next step. Did you say how many campuses now you've been to?
No, so after Auburn, we went to FSU. I won't go through and name all of them because 'cause I'll probably forget, but we have been
Okay.
on 17 campuses,
Wow.
um, representing over 300 universities. We've seen over 100,000 students gather, and crazy
And that's
enough,
just in the last 2 years.
yeah, in less than 2 years,
Holy
almost
cow.
2 years now, and we have seen close to 15,000 students documented give their lives to Jesus, follow up in water baptism, and get connected to a local church, which is the heart of our ministry. And we are scheduled for 7 more Unite events this fall.
Unbelievable. Man.
It's just it's not stopping, and the I and I'll tell you, this is the unique thing about it is it's so student led. So yes, we developed a model and a checklist for how this would look on each campus. We kinda based it off of how it was at Auburn,
Yep.
and so I will have students reach out to me. We don't go to a university where they don't reach out asking. We set it up with their basketball arena, and then I work with these students through Zooms, sometimes once a week, every other week, and they lead it all. So I'm like, "Here's the checklist, this is what you do," and then they're responsible for fundraising and connecting ministries and, all the different things that we do, and it's just beautiful because it's setting these students up to do what you guys teach, and that is send them out.
Mhm.
Go
Yeah.
out into the world, and so I think what we do with these student leaders is preparing them for that. They want more, and they can and listen, these leaders, like, when we went to FSU, now the FSU students will go as far as Ohio State, then they'll go to Purdue, they'll go to all these different universities because they can't get enough.
They just wanna be part of it. Yeah.
They do.
Wow. So, is prayer something that you kind of say, hey, if you're going to start one,
Yes.
here's all the logistics checklist, but what is the spiritual component? Because I think that's some really interesting principles about how change happens is, you're looking to partner with people that have the spiritual hunger.
Mm.
Don't waste your time where, the ground is hard and no one wants you to come. Like, just find the places where there's real hunger, and you see God stirring people, and put your effort there. And then what do you tell them to do besides, raise money, get the, word out and things like that?
The first initial Zoom that we get on, the very first thing I say to the student leaders is, if you're not praying on your campus, we're not coming.
Come
And
on.
so
Yeah.
this thing started with prayer. This thing is continuing because of prayer, and it will not stop because people won't stop praying. That's the first thing they are told that they have to do before we will come. And so I don't care if it's 5 people or 500 people, but we need people praying on your campus. I know we're going back to Tennessee. We've already been to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. We're going back there in the fall because those students are praying 7 days a week at 7 a.m. every single day for their campus and for Unite to come back. And they're evangelizing like crazy. Radical
Mm.
discipleship's going on there. It's just so special. We went to the University of Kentucky. The students there were leading, um, I think they said they had like 49 miles of Jericho marches where they went through sorority,
That is awesome.
the sorority houses, they went through the bars, all the things around campus and on campus, and walked up to 42 miles, in those Jericho marches, breaking down the walls of their campus, and just so beautiful. And I'll tell you, Kentucky was a very, very powerful event. We had, I think, around 2,000 students come forward for salvation. That's the
Yeah.
power of prayer. When your prayers reach the heart of God, things happen.
Yeah.
And so it's just really, really powerful.
Wow. Has anybody reached out for the University of Illinois yet?
We get a lot of requests. I'd have to go back and check that one specifically.
Yeah. That's just my
We're
alma mater, and I'm
yeah,
always jealous to see
yeah.
God break out there.
If you know students there that are on fire and hungry, we would love to go.
I bet there's one listening right now. We'll get it going.
Yes.
Okay. So, tell me, has God? Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know that purity was a part of the message. Has He given you any sort of? Do you feel like there is a responsibility or anything to do follow up with that, like giving them some program or a way to get free, or do you just feel like God's kind of given you that call to have that moment, and then the local churches will be the one to help them walk it out?
It's a great question. So far, we have pretty much left it with the local team of students and the local churches. So we invite every church in the city and every campus ministry to be a part of what we're doing, to promote it, but then to follow up. And
Hmm.
then we have a system where we take every name of every student who gets saved and baptized. We give those to the churches, and then
Oh,
they're
cool.
responsible for following up. And the local team will get on calls and invite them to be a part of different things. Um, God's given me a deeper burden for what that follow-up looks like, and so we're working on implementing radical discipleship where we hire and send our team to go in following the event and just kind of disciple these students and encourage them, remind them, and give them practical ways for how to walk it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Send is very similar to Unite. We have these big events, but the big wrestle is like, we're not here for the event, we're here for
Right.
the take action, for the follow-up.
That's
And
right.
I mean, it's one of the reasons why we started this podcast, is we want people to continue to be encouraged with these stories of what God's doing. But we understand that wrestle. It's you get such a burden for all these people that are getting marked, but then at the end of the day, it's like, well, okay, these great partners that we're working with in the local churches, they're a part of God's plan. Like, we're each playing a part. But yeah, it's an interesting wrestle, and that's why I was interested in the question. I mean, obviously, it sounds like you have some sort of a history of paying attention to God's voice. Those little ways that He's speaking, whether is, oh, God speaks to me in repetition, or I mean, I don't know many people that would quit their job based on the subject line of an
Me either.
email. So maybe that's what it takes to be somebody that changes the world. You're really looking for God's voice everywhere.
The only thing I would ever say in answering that question is I pray a lot. But take you back to 2020, when I got COVID and came as close to death as you can possibly come. And
Oh,
I just
wow.
remember, yeah, I was in bed for about 8 weeks, couldn't leave my house, couldn't get out of bed, didn't eat anything for 8 weeks. And I remember being so sick, waking up one day, writing a letter to my daughters, thinking it was my last day, and just praying and begging God to have mercy on me. And I basically was screaming to God, like, if you will have mercy on me and let me live, I'll do anything you ask me to do.
Oh,
And I had
wow.
no idea the assignment that was coming, um, but I meant what I said. And I think, God allowed me to live, and then he put me in the lives of some of these students who were just going through very, very difficult times. And in that time, also my 3 daughters had moved out of the house, and my husband, being a basketball coach, is gone a lot. And so for me, it became a time of, I don't know if you would call it isolation, but in a sense it was. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of time alone. And in that time I spent alone, I spent with God, and it became just me and God in prayer every day. And I think in that, coming out of that sickness, um, having that conversation with God about letting me live, I'll do what you asked me to do, and then going into a time of isolation, deep prayer, just set me up for what was coming. And then my husband being a basketball coach on a college campus, it's like God was connecting dots or putting together puzzle pieces that were all just setting us up for what was coming. I'll tell people all the time, I'm nobody special. I just pray a lot. And I
Yeah.
think when you abide in the presence of the Lord, he will speak to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking, it's something that we need the Christians to do. I think a lot of us, probably the majority of people, are plagued by some sort of lie, like, "I'm nobody special,"
Mhm.
um, I God can't do something big with me. But then I think through the eyes of faith, you kinda look, what are the things that God's put in my hands? And, for you, it was a connection to your husband's got connections at the university. I don't know how you figured out how to set up a 501(c)(3), but you probably got some people in your life that are good at that, or, you know, at least the finances to pay somebody to figure it out.
Right.
And we kinda need Christians to kinda say, I'm not the perfect person to lead this, but I have these gifts in my hands." I guess the bread and the loaves, or the bread and the fish. It's like these simple things, and I'm gonna see the need. And that's what's so compelling, is you were looking at hearing these college girls' stories, and your heart was breaking. And so it was this combination of this faithfulness in prayer, seeing a need, and then you had a real surrender moment where it was like, "God, anything you want." All those things combined together and say, "I'm gonna get over the insecurity. I don't have time to be insecure. I don't have time to say I'm not the one, because the need is so big."
That's right.
And so then you just kind of say, "Well, let's take action. Let's go go for it."
Absolutely.
Um, I am kinda curious, though. I think you said that email came in 2019, and then 2023, so that's 4 years.
So I was off a year. It was 2018, I believe,
Okay. Well, then
when
that's even 5 years. So, this idea of, okay, God stirring something big is happening, because I think there's probably a lot of people that feel that something big
yeah.
is
Yeah.
happening, and I think they would be interested to hear, how do you carry that in your heart, and then figure out when it is time to take action?
Mm.
Because that in that 5 years between actually launching it and you kind of feeling like something big is happening, that's plenty of time where you can kind of, maybe I didn't hear, doubt can creep in, because time, God usually works a lot slower than we want him to.
Yeah.
But, there was something that you did to keep that dream alive and kinda keep following God's breadcrumbs. So what do you think, what advice would you give to people that kind of feel like, "Oh, God's telling me something big is happening, but I'm in the midst of that 5 years where it hasn't launched yet." How did you steward it? How did you keep that dream alive? And what maybe little steps did you take along the way to push the story forward?
I think after my something big is coming went into the final 4 story. I didn't tell you, though. I have to buy my book that's coming out.
Let's go. That's
Called
awesome.
It's called Roses to Revival, but there's a story in there about the Final Four and not praying short. And it's a powerful story that really launched all of this. And it
Huh.
was God, something that happened where God showed me, don't pray short. But that teaching me to pray big was all leading up to 2023. The beginning of 2023, I remember sitting down at the table with my family, and every year in January, we write down our word for the year, our scripture for the year, and our goals for the year. My word that year, for some reason, was rise. And it
Hmm.
was based off of Ezra, and now I'm losing it, 4:10 or 10:4, where it says, rise up and do it. And for
Yeah.
me, I had never even read the scripture. I didn't know, why that was significant for me at the time, but I wrote it down, and my goal for the year was to start and launch an event.
Oh,
And this I had no idea what was coming. Then I come back and I start leading the prayers on Auburn's campuses and mentoring these students. And in that, just I think sometimes when you write down the word, you write down the dream, because when
yeah.
you write it down and you refer back to it, I put it somewhere where I had to see it every day. And I'll tell you, this is so strange, but that year, I not only started and led one event, I led two. One was a mother daughter event, and the second one was Unite Auburn. The next year, my word was, oh, what was it? Expectations. I can't remember, but anyway, my goal was to start and speak or lead and speak at 10 events. Or Unite did 10 events that year.
Oh, no
Crazy.
way.
I have no control over that because it's whoever reaches out to us. We
Yeah.
ended up doing 10. This year, my word is fight. So you can imagine. You can only imagine. But
You don't wanna get that word at the beginning of the year.
you're like, why even write that word down? I mean, because then you know you're gonna be going through a fight. But I do think writing down your vision, writing down your goals, seeing it on paper. One thing I'll tell my student leaders, I'll do student leadership gatherings, and I'll really try to inspire them. I'm like, you may not even feel like you're gonna write a book one day or that you're even qualified to write a book. Start writing your book.
Hmm.
You may not feel qualified or like you're worthy to start a podcast. Write down the name of your podcast. Who knows, it's not gonna start a year from now. And write the words to your song, the lyrics to your song, because one day you might be producing a song. So I think writing it down, but then I'll just tell you my situation's a little different because once I heard those stories and started and saw the vision for Unite, it's like I wasn't myself. It's like
Huh.
the Spirit of God came over me, and what was coming out of me was not me. I've never been somebody who's been, like, super bold and authoritative, and I was in that moment, and I think the authority and the boldness that I had when I sat down with lead pastors got their attention, and it's like they could sense and feel what I was sharing with them, but it was like nothing could stop me. Nothing could stop me. Like, I knew this was from God, and my yes and my obedience was gonna have a ripple effect for generations to come, and it was almost like I won't stop. Every day matters. I'm
Yeah.
not guaranteed tomorrow, and I've gotta fight for the people that I care about, and so that was my situation. I don't know that that's the same for most people, but, I would say write it down, and I will say this too, if you are a mom or if you are a dad, there are students, high school, middle school, college students, who are desperate for spiritual moms and dads, and
100%.
they may not have a mom or dad that's close to them or that they would even share things with where they would with you, and so I guess me raising my own daughters, I was always very close to them. When I started mentoring college students, I didn't realize how desperate they
Huh.
needed a mother figure. Um, so I that and I still see that. I'll get DMs from girls at universities because I go into sororities before we speak at events and just love on them. And I'll get DMs saying, "Can you mentor me? Can you talk to me?" Things like that. So there's a lot of need for that.
I think the place of prayer is so important because that's where God puts his dream in you.
Mhm.
Like, I think a lot of times I grew up kind of feeling like, okay, I'm gonna pray and, like, it's all about me saying things and releasing, some sort of God's power. But I now I kinda I and I still believe in that, but, um, I think the more powerful thing is when I pray, God puts his dreams and his ideas in me. And then it's like when you align with what God wants to do, you do have that conviction and that boldness. And you just, there's something in you. It's like, I just know this needs to happen. So you have, crazy conviction to go up to people and say, I want your arena. We are going to fill it. And you kind of say these impossible things because you're like, God put something in my heart. And so I think that's a really interesting principle that people need to pay attention to. It's if you want to see God move, you need to spend enough time with him until that conviction that you've heard something
Right.
really takes root. Um, yeah. Tell me about how you collaborate, because I think you do that really well. This isn't just a one-woman show. You built a team. I mean, God told you to build a team, and then you empower these students. And I think maybe athletes probably play some sort of a role in um, generating some excitement for what's going to happen. But yeah, I think a lot of times when people say like, "Oh, I want to see change happen. I want to start something," or God's given me an idea, it all falls on their shoulders.
Mm.
And I think they could learn from you. What have you learned about empowering others, not doing it all yourself,
Mm.
and allowing young people to have ownership in what God's building?
I think that's the most important thing I've been able to do is empowering others and especially student leaders and giving them the responsibilities of doing the fundraising. Now we've kind of come into a place now where we've been so blessed. Um, it's like, wow, the funding's going before us. Like it's insane, but we still want those students to have ownership in all the different parts of Unite. And I think empowering them to do that makes them come into the event and walk in and like us, they're not knowing how many are gonna show up, and they walk into their own arena on their own college campus, and they see 10,000 students gather, and they're just in awe, and, "Wow, God, like, I had a part in this. I had a part to play in this." Um, and then also just coming together and collabing with the local churches and campus ministries is really special because, I had someone say to me at the very beginning when I shared the vision, it was after Auburn happened. They said, I know you use the word unite. You can go in and you can unite students. You'll never unite churches.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
don't tell me never because that just empowers me more. But I was like, and at first I was, and this was coming from a pastor, so at first I was like, oh wow, okay, well he should know, he's experienced. Um, But what I can tell you is we will leave a city and the pastors in that city will start coming together and they'll say, I didn't even know Pastor so and so across the city. And now we're close and now we're all coming together to gather once a month to discuss and hey, I don't even care if the students come to my church. If they go to yours, like that's a win. Like we just want them in church.
Tell me a little bit like the nuts and bolts. So if students, they reach out and they're like, we have to do it on our campus. What unfolds? Like, what is the process? What are all the pieces? Because you just talked about bringing pastors together, having some sort of follow-up plan to get all the students in different churches. So there must be some sort of planning that goes into place where you're having pre-meetings. I don't know how the word gets out on campus. Are they putting up posters? Are they going to the student groups? But just kind of walk us through the how you actually pull one of these off.
Yeah, they have a lot of promotional things that they use on campus for sure. We do get to speak to some sororities and fraternities to promote it. The athletes, the coaches. I'll tell you, the coaches have been surprisingly some of our biggest supporters and biggest promoters and biggest donors. And when I first had the vision for Unite, I told my husband who was coaching at Auburn, I was like, I said, I know we're doing this for students, but in a sense, I feel like this is going to be just as much for coaches. And I said, just watch. I said, we're going to do something with coaches, especially in the greater vision of what's coming. It's going to bring together students from all over the nation, but also coaches. And so, interestingly enough, we have had some of the head coaches on other coaches on every campus have been a big part of what we're doing. So, but yeah, we
Hmm.
do that. We have our own social media, and our website, so we get a lot of stuff out through that. But yeah, I mean, we promote, post as much as we can, um, and students do most of it.
Are you going ahead of time? Do you send some of your team ahead of time to do like pull the pastors together, or is it Zoom calls,
Students
or
students do it. We do
students are doing
Zoom
it
call.
all?
Mhm, mhm.
Wow,
We
that's
started
so
out going it. I would go in and gather the pastors and present, and then I was like, "They wanna hear from students." Like, they need to see the passion, and the fire from these students, so the students are leading it completely.
that's so cool. So the students call up all the local pastors and they say, "Hey, we're gonna have a meeting," and then they're just talking about, "Here's the event we're gonna do. This is the follow up." Um, and then is somebody figuring out like, do you guys print out anything? Like, are the students figuring out like where do we print these flyers or
For promotion ahead of time, or you mean at
promotion or at the event or something like that? I don't know. Maybe people don't print things for events anymore. That might be old school.
I don't think we print anything. We do the QR code, and then that's our system for following up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, okay, tell me a little bit about what are some challenges, I guess, that maybe you didn't anticipate and obstacles that you've had to overcome, maybe internally, just in your own heart,
Mhm.
and complicated things that you didn't expect, logistics or how to make this work.
Internally, I will say from the very beginning of Auburn and even today leading into our, fall events, for me, definitely physical attacks. Um, I
Like with your
remember
health?
yes. I remember, prayer walks, prayer time in Auburn's stadium leading up to Unite Auburn, and having a friend that was there praying. I said, "Will you come pray for me?" Like, I don't know how to explain the pain that I'm feeling, in my stomach, and I was like, "But it's almost like I'm in labor." And she said,
Oh, wow.
"Sometimes you carry in your physical body what's being manifested through the spirit, and sometimes it'll feel like birthing pains," which is what I was feeling. This is crazy. We started praying in January, I believe January, and then the event took place in September. That was 9 months later. And we did all the planning and all the prayer and all the things getting ready for that one event in September, and so, I don't know, it was almost like I gave birth to something, and then
Yeah.
and it's like every year since then, I've just really battled that. That's personal and physical. I would say the biggest challenge for us with All Things Unite is getting the basketball arenas. That is always a challenge because we have to work around all the athletic schedules, that practice and play in the arena. But somehow it always works out. Um,
Mhm.
we've only had one school where it just never did work out, and we ended up having to do it in their, music hall, which was still incredible. But that's our biggest challenge. Other than that, I think God's hand's just on it so much. We've just been super, super blessed.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, Will was texting me, Will with Run with Christ before this, and he was like, "Oh, I can't believe you're doing a podcast with Tanya." And
Mhm.
he was like, "Okay, ask her, like, what advice would you give to these young people?" I'm thinking of him starting a movement. Um, what advice would you give to a young person that's following that dream of God, and they're facing their whatever version of their trials are, and they don't know how to figure everything out, and the story of God is unfolding. Do you have any advice that you would give somebody kind of at the beginning of this journey, kind of wrestling with, I know God spoke, but how do I make this happen?
I would say, like I said earlier, I would say pray a lot, obviously. Pray a lot. Make sure you've heard from God. I think sometimes if you've heard from God, a lot of times things will fall into place as He shows you. It may not co and Jenny Allen and I talk about this all the time. When you're carrying an assignment, a movement, anything significant, for God, it's gonna come with a cost, you
Hmm.
know, and she'll say all the time, "Tanya, you carry the cost for this more than anybody," kinda thing, and it does, but you know what? Those students are worth fighting for. And so I'm not going to stop. But I would say for a student who is wanting to do that, I know I have a lot of my small group girls that will say, I'll say, "What's your greatest fear?" And I'm thinking they're, worried about somebody dying or whatever. Their greatest fear is always, every group I've ever met with, their greatest fear is missing God or
Whoa.
not fulfilling their purpose. Every college student I've ever talked to they're so afraid of missing their purpose and not doing what God put them on earth to do. Um, and I just remind them all the time, he's a mighty big target. Like, you're so scared of missing him, but he's a mighty big target, and he can redirect you if you get off course, but a lot of times they just get so stressed about it, and, but I will say, just keep fighting, and if you're facing obstacles and hurdles along the way, just keep fighting. I
Yeah.
know Will, it kinda came easy too, because it was like, he kinda had this vision and then it just took off, and, like, it took off so fast, it got bigger than him, and
Oh,
he's having
yeah.
to go beg with people for, "Give me some advice, how do I
It's
manage
crazy.
this?" Like,
Yeah.
and for me too, I was like, "How do I manage this?" My board is all businessmen.
Yeah.
And they're all, like, business leaders who have had to fail along the way and learn how what makes things right, and so I'm like, "Tell me, like, advise me, tell me, I wanna hear, I wanna know," and, they've been incredible, but yeah, and I would definitely say, and surround yourself with praying people that hear from
Well, that's
God, and
good.
surround
That's really
yourself,
good.
and there's one other thing too, because I talk to students a lot, and even, um, will say this to some of my adult leaders, is make sure you're not listening to too many voices, because one thing I found out with this generation is they go from grandma, mom, pastor, small group leader, friend, uncle, they go from person to person. "What do you think? What do you think? What do you think I should
Yeah.
do?" And I said, "Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes you just need to hear from God yourself." And I think this
Whoa.
generation has a hard time discerning the voice of God because there's so much noise around them. And they're seeking the
That was right on point. There's so much noise around him. Cue the leaf blower.
I would say that's so important for this generation, is to learn how to hear God for yourself.
Yeah. Oh, how do you coach somebody in that? Like, if, these young girls that you mentor and they're like, "Okay, I wanna learn how to hear God's voice. How do I do it?" What would be kinda the lesson that you would give them?
What I always tell them is abide. The time you spend abiding with God is gonna teach you how to hear from him through his word, um, through messages that you're listening to, and then just through prayer alone with God. You'll learn how to hear his voice, and we hear his voice differently. I mean, I
Yeah,
see
true.
signs. He repeats himself to me a lot of times through signs, and that would seem so weird to other people. I feel weird even saying it. Like, my daughter going on the show, we're in Israel and we're praying, and my husband and I are in Israel, and she's going through interviews with the Bachelor, producers, and it's like, I can't go anywhere that I don't see a rose. And I know everybody's like, "Oh, well, you're looking for it, whatever." But no, I know when God's trying to, he'll put it in the weirdest places. Like, I'm
Huh.
sitting at the Sea of Galilee. I sit down on a bench to take notes, the leader's sharing, and I turn around to put my journal down, and there's a single rose carved on the bench. And I go to the Garden of Gethsemane. I go to a log to pray. On the log is carved a single rose.
Huh.
Um, when out on the beach, someone had painted a single rose on the beach. And my whole prayer focus at the time was, if she should go on the show or not, God, let this cup pass from us unless it serves a greater purpose, type thing. So I don't know. People hear from God different ways, but abiding with him and spending time with him, I think, is how you truly hear from him.
Wow. Yeah. That's, and I think with that, there has to be a risk element because, you're trying to learn how to pay attention to that small voice of God, however it, comes. But then you have to act on it, and that's the way you find out, was that actually God speaking to me? And through that
Right.
process of paying attention, abiding, taking risks,
Mm-hmm.
you that's the adventure of God for your life. Maybe it just is the last question, like, where is this all going? Like, how many more campuses? Like, what kind of hope are you carrying in your heart? Like, what would you say to a college student? Like, what's coming? What should they be expecting for? What should they be praying for?
Um, JP and Jenny and I talk about this all the time. They speak at all of our events. They've been at all 17 events, but we'll talk about it all the time. Is this thing going to continue until Jesus comes back?
Hmm.
And obviously, we don't know the answer to that. We don't know when Jesus is coming back, and we don't know how long this thing's going to go on, but we will keep going in the direction of that until he tells us to stop. And I do believe that God is a God who speaks to me and says, go, and then he'll speak to me when it's time to stop. And he hasn't said that yet. And so as long as students are reaching out, any students who reach out from different campuses, we will go. And we will keep doing what we're doing and keep taking the message of truth and hope to college campuses. I don't know if this thing is going to spread into something international. We've been contacted by several different other nations wanting us to come. I have a greater vision for our nation, but I have an even greater vision for the nations.
Come on, yes.
I do see uniting college campuses unite our nation, and I'll even say it, unite our world.
Yeah, I mean, it's
And
God's
so,
heart.
yeah, it's his heart. And unity, I think, is bringing people together. And I do believe God wants to clean up and unify his people before he returns. And so I do believe going forward, part of the message for Unite is to remind God's people, I'm coming soon. Make the most of every day. Every single day of your life matters.
The church is almost at its best when there is that sense of urgency.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look at the needs around you. Look at the reality that Jesus is involved in the details of our lives, and there is a real judgment and a consequence of going down the path of death rather than the path of life, and so we need to be gripped by that urgency, and that's something I think the Send is absolutely feels compelled by. We look at the need and the 3.4 billion people that have never experienced the love of Jesus, and we see the college campuses all around the world, and we're like, we got to send people. We have to do it, and so we're 100% with you in that dream. And I cannot tell you how fun that conversation was, just to hear
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes, the God story. It's amazing how many of these stories are so similar. It's not some big whiteboard strategy session. It really starts from that place of getting gripped, hearing God in prayer, seeing a need that breaks your heart and saying, I have to do something, and then following God, putting the steps together, and then
So
unbelievable
good.
things
Yeah.
are happening. So I'm the biggest fan of Unite, and thank you for sharing your story with us.